Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mic Drop with Julia, where we get to see a person behind the title. Today, I'm very happy to welcome Jennifer McGhee, who is formerly the head of data strategy and governance at MFS Investment Management. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you, Julia. I'm happy to be here.
Yes, and I have a question for you. If you go back to your career, what is one of the most important and maybe somewhat unexpected lessons learned in your career that you're going to carry with you going forward?
Thank you, Julia, for that question. I have a story to share as I reflected back on my career. I took a senior role at a company that wanted a formalized data program. And I was really excited to help them because we were starting from scratch, pulling together teams from various parts of the organization to really formalize what we want to do with data strategy and governance. But here's the mic drop moment from this experience. The company said that data was a big priority, but they didn't budget for it. And I didn't even think to ask. Never crossed my mind. I never asked during the interview process. I discovered that I had a team to work with, but a very small budget, and it was more or less fixed. Company year over year would try to hold budgets flat. So when you're starting with nothing and you're keeping the budgets flat or potentially cutting them, it doesn't result in a positive outcome for my data program. So that was a problem. And I spent years trying to increase it. It was a fight every year. And I also realized that the budgeting was decentralized and disconnected in the organization. Each business unit was making their own plans at budgeting season, and they were doing that without linking it to an enterprise strategy, which meant that we had a lot of competing priorities, and my little data program was not gaining a lot of traction within the organization. It's interesting because I was recently on a board call with another group that I'm a board member of. And within that call, we were talking about budgeting and how we should throw out big numbers and sky's the limit ideas. And then we'll just whittle it down from there until we get to what's realistic. Someone said, well, isn't that what corporations do all the time? A waste of time. Why don't we just start with working with each other? I really think it's important to have a shared strategy, coordinating budgets, because if you don't do that, you're constantly fighting the current. And that's what I was experiencing.
That resonates just so much. I've been lucky in the last job. I did have an enterprise budget, but then there were line of businesses budgets. And the way they looked at me was that I would build something in data land, and then somehow whatever I built in the data land would help them in their business land. Of course, I will magically build something so useful without them having to do anything or having any initiatives to connect business land to data land. And one of the things that I've been doing since then is saying data land is part of the business land. It's not a separate island. And it's a difficult conversation because the data land is not separate. Like every business has its own part and it's all intermixed. And the whole point is to make it valuable for the business. But if you don't intermix it and it doesn't intermix in the budget and in the initiatives of the business lines, then you can't really do it. But
that is correct. The siloed budgeting does not work. You end up with disconnected priorities. As I said, you're constantly fighting for support, and you can't magically build something without the business's input, nor should you, because ultimately each business unit should be working towards the growth of the organization, and you should be doing that collectively aligned on what that looks like.
Even if you have a team, if it's the same team that was doing things before, there is no room to create the strategy. So yeah, that's a difficult, and you kind of ask for support and you assume support comes with the budget.
Right.
But it's a silent assumption. So you kind of have to say it out loud and not make it a silent assumption. It's a difficult lesson to learn. It's a painful one.
It is a painful one, but now it is a lesson that I have learned, and I hope that I won't make that mistake again, and I will ask the question. I also do think, just building off of your discussions around political capital, that it's so important to be building relationships in an organization, especially with finance and with those responsible for strategy in the various business units, so that you can have a seat in those conversations.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of what you do, even if you have the budget. If everything's great and you have the budget, still don't go onto Data Island and build the data magic kingdom. Well, thank you. Now it's not just your lesson. Hopefully, for everybody who listens, gets that lesson as well and asks explicitly about what kind of budget and how do you work on budget and how does it actually happen.
Right.
So,
right. I think that is key. Is it's not just, is there a budget, but how does the budgeting process work in the organization?
Yeah, absolutely. So the second question that I have is, what advice would you give if you're in the front of room of a data management professional? What the advice would you give them?
I have a couple of things that, building off of that story, first of all, ask about the budget. Don't assume that just because an organization says the data is a priority, that means that it's funded and that you have the support that you need. And I think, piggybacking off of that, thinking about support, it's so important in the data space to build relationships. You need to be talking to everyone in the organization. You need to understand who your stakeholders are, what their priorities are, what their pain points are, and it's those relationships that are going to get you a seat at the table so that you can help shape the budget and the strategy that supports not just your data program, but the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. The first fight is to get a seat at the table. The second fight, which is actually, I think, even much more important once you get the first one down, is that even if you're not at the table, people who are making decisions, prioritization decisions, budgeting decisions, do it in a data-centric way. Yeah, again, it's based on my experience. I got to the point I absolutely had a seat at the table. Every business offsite included me, which was the first 2 years unheard of. And then I was included in all of the discussions and offsites, and I had a seat at the table. What happened was that a lot of decisions were still being made just in normal meetings, that I couldn't be part of every single meeting of every business line and technology team. That's not how companies
feasible, no.
And the decisions being made, they're not that they were explicitly made, oh, Julia is not here, we're going to make a different decision. They were just made the same way they've always been made. So it didn't become the part of the culture and fabric of the company to make decisions that way. So it's a process. Right? Yes. First sit at the table, then everybody gets it well enough that even if you're not in the table, it's virtually you're there because it's part of the culture of the company. Well, thank you, Jennifer. Thank you for wonderful advice.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.